Well, Tim, in the time that we have remaining, I think we should sort of jump straight in. And you first spoke about productivity. So what motivated you to write a book on productivity?
Basically, my own lack of productivity. So I'm by nature a very disorganized person, a very lazy person. That's just my nature. You can ask my parents. You can look at my report cards from when I was in school. I'm lazy and disorganized. And over time, I really became convicted that God was calling me to live in this world for the good of others and the glory of God. And the only hope I had to do that was to pursue productivity by putting measures in my life that would help me be more productive. And so over many years, I put that in my life, and then I really found God's blessing in it, really found that, no, this is the life God calls us to, doing good to others, bringing glory to Him. And so eventually wrote about it.
Well, I know the book has been helpful for me. What has been some of the response you've received?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been really interesting to see people take something very instructive, so down to the install this software and very granular level, but I think people have responded well. And to me, it doesn't matter if people are following my method or not. I think just opening up to people the idea, live to God's glory by doing good to others, and plan your life to live in that way. That can make all the difference versus doing it haphazardly. So build a system, and that's what I laid out in the book.
You talk about a phrase, plan neglect.
Yeah.
Can you just expand on that for a little bit?
Yeah, so planned neglect is choosing the things in life that you won't do. And I don't think you're really managing your time in life until you're saying no to things, until you're saying no to a lot of things, until you're saying no to some really good things. I think we all have to deal with the fact that we are little people who live little lives, and there's so many things we could do. We've got to plan which ones we will neglect, which ones we won't do. So it's really just a means of ensuring that we understand our own limitations and don't think that God needs us in the way we need God. Can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
That's allowed? All right.
It's allowed.
If I understand you correctly, you said that selfies are always evil, right?
No, that's not what I said.
All right, so explain. What's so dangerous about selfies?
Well, one thing I mentioned, selfies tend to encourage, well, they're called selfies, right? They're images of self. Yeah. So they are directing our thoughts, our intentions to self. It's this inward focus. And Christianity, by its nature, is one of dying to self, not living for selfie, right? For living for self, right? We are a very selfie-centered people by our sinful nature. But there's another danger I didn't get to touch on, but I think is also important. Selfies can be dangerous. It's tragic seeing the deceitfulness of sin today where, you have an individual take a selfie, but they know which angle to hold the iPhone so their jawline looks the best. Maybe it cuts a few pounds off. They then add a filter to the selfie. Some may even go as far as photoshopping it just to remove the blemish or whatever it is. So then they post it to Instagram or whatever their social media service or, platform of choice is. Then they hover over it and they are wanting to see how many retweets or hearts or likes they get. And from that, they're getting a sense of encouragement. They're feeling accepted or loved or whatever it is. They're craving that attention. But deep down, they know that it's fake. Because their friends that are commenting about how beautiful they look or whatever it is, they know it's not really them. They've put up a fake image of self, and they're trying to see whether the world can love this false image. So it's a tragic cycle, and there are plenty of stories online of, sadly, young people taking their lives, getting caught up in this. There's been people that have been doing this that have sort of come out and said, I want to expose this aspect of this really self-centered aspect to Instagram and selfies and things like that. So it certainly can be very dangerous.
So the Bible has a category for idolatry, right? Mm-hmm. Pursuing things other than God, finding our hope, finding our significance in something other than God. So what you're saying is if you're living online, if you're living for likes, or you're living for hearts or whatever, that is idolatry, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of finding your joy and confidence in God, you're only as good as your last selfie, only as good as your last like, right?
And sadly, you're only as good as this fake selfie. It's not even who you really are.
Right.
So very dangerous, deceptive.
So selfies can be good. Selfies are fine. Just go to the heart.
I think there is, a real opportunity that we have for us. Paul call those at Corinth, follow him as he followed Christ. You can model what it means to live the Christian life in the 21st century. Millennials, they love the authentic. They love storytelling. They're not so interested in sort of the polished final product. They like something that's a bit raw. So I think there is an opportunity that we haven't had before us to be able to show in a more transparent way what it can mean to follow Christ. I also think there's an opportunity for some leaders, men we might look up to, that, especially in the reform world, we can get the impression that to be a godly Christian man or woman is to keep your head in a book all the time. And that all pastors do is, study Greek and Hebrew. But you can see, if you're following certain people on social media, that no, they love their kids and they love their wives and recreation is okay. And so I do think there's some opportunities to really be able to humanize people that, we normally only get one glimpse of their life. But, Instagram isn't enough. You can fake it. You can post that picture with your wife on a date night, but really the real reason you're going out is because you don't talk to each other and you're on the brink of divorce, and so you've just smiled and taken a selfie and the world thinks you have a wonderful marriage, but it's really, it's just a lie. It's Knight's commandment issue. So Instagram and all that isn't enough, but I do think there is an opportunity. Tim, you spoke about purity. Now, I ask you this as a father. Your children are a little bit older than mine. My oldest is 10, my youngest is 2. So I know it's not long before we reach the terrifying statistic you said of 12 years of age before someone may see pornography for the first time. Help these guys out here. What are some of the ways that we can prepare to protect our family from the dangers of the internet?
Yeah, so I think with the statistics, we have to let them intimidate us. We have to just deal with them as they are, and these are very wide. It's not just one group with a big agenda coming up with that kind of statistic. It really is around age 11, 12, 13 that kids tend to be exposed to really vile things online. So we as parents, that just gives us the challenge, right? We've got to do something to protect our children. And I really think the place to start is with a plan. We have to understand what's going on out there. We have to get a read on how kids are using their devices, what kinds of things they're doing online, and we have to develop a plan that will protect them. And that plan has to do a couple of things. It has to, first, hold the bad stuff at bay, and second, it has to deal with our kids' character. Right? And really what we want to do is hold the bad stuff at bay while we're generating character, while we're helping our kids grow in character. And then hopefully over time, their character has grown to the point that we can then kind of pull back the barricades and trust that they will know now how to act, that they will be so armed that they will know how to respond when they come across pornographic material. So you see, we kind of put these measures in place to hold things back and teach and train our kids. So I've done a fair bit of writing on this. If you search for the porn-free family plan, you'll find some things I've written about it, and hopefully just find a plan, stick to it, and make sure you've got both of those, the technological solution, but also the character solution. We tend to think that whenever technology causes a problem, more technology will fix the problem. But the problem that has come through the technology is really just the problem of the human heart. Right? It's the human heart that wants pornography, not the iPhone. So make sure you're addressing your children's character, understanding that even your beloved son, it's so hard to believe, but even your child may at some point have this desire. And don't neglect girls. There's more and more girls who are really struggling with it. They've been exposed. Somehow it's become attractive, and they're now struggling with this as well.
So these tools, you're saying you were putting them in place while you're trying to nurture character. Yep. So there's this connection between spiritual maturity, Christian maturity, and pornography.
Right, absolutely. And as your spiritual maturity grows, then hopefully it casts out that sin. Hopefully you put that sin to death. Whatever sin it is, the sin of lust or the sin of some kind of idolatry or whatever sin it is that sends you back to the pornographic stuff again and again, hopefully as you grow in Christian maturity, that sin becomes repulsive and obedience to God becomes desirable. So I think there's again, that two-part plan. Please, parents, don't neglect character. It's so easy to just find some technology and think that will solve the issue. Get in your children's lives and train your children's hearts. That's the most important thing you can do. You use the phrase, pixels are people. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Tell me what it means. Tell me why you'd use that, what you mean by it.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's a helpful reminder for us because we live, you and I particularly, we're working in an online environment, technology, communications, we're writing blogs, things like that. You can easily forget that pixels are people, that the recipients of your words, those that are reading blog posts, reading your tweets, whatever it may be, that they're actually people, they're flesh and blood. And we know that there are things we wouldn't walk up and say to someone in person, but we're happy to tweet about it. Dr. Sproul at a conference, he addresses a message. If you disagree with him, most people are not going to walk up the front here and challenge him, but they'll go to Twitter and say why Dr. Sproul's wrong. But they won't show the same honor and respect, online as they would in person. And so I think it's a helpful reminder for Christians that when we're looking for how do we engage with people online, how do we control our speech, well, you just look to the Scriptures, and we shouldn't have this online-offline distinction. The same morality God calls for us in the offline world, we should follow online. But there's a flip side to that as well. There are some people that neglect the internet, and they sort of have a viewpoint that, well, it's just Facebook. It's just Twitter. We don't need to worry about social media. And they can forget that no, pixels are people. There are real people connected to the internet. There are real people on Facebook every day, and they're real sinners that need Jesus. And we have this opportunity, there's this mission field of people that we can reach with the truth. And I know that I want, if someone punches into Google, is Jesus God? I want them to find a sound, trustworthy article from a Christian that says, yes, he is, and that explains the gospel. But if we forget that pixels are people, we can neglect that and think websites, new technology, doing it well, it's not important.
So much of the content we see online is content created to be viral, but not to actually serve people, to love people. So you're saying if we keep in mind pixels are people, that will steer us away from that junk kind of content that pollutes the internet, and help us create content, create articles, whatever it is, that are genuinely serving people.
Cat videos have not saved anybody. And they have not helped with
so
productivity.
Far. Right. Fair enough. You used the phrase sinful courage. I've often realized that everyone's a hero when they're behind a keyboard, right? Everybody's brave. Is that the kind of thing you're getting at with that?
Keyboard warriors in their mother's basement, they're blogging away.
Right.
Of course, that's not us, but, right? But yeah, the internet sort of gives us this sinful courage where we suddenly get really brave because we're behind a screen and we're potentially hundreds of thousands of miles away from whoever is, the victim of our words. But we need to realize from where we've come, right? We are humble people. We should be humble people. By nature, we're prideful people. And so we need to fight against this courage by asking God for humility. And we know that humility is not going to come into the hearts of anyone unless God does a sovereign work. But for us Christians, particularly Reformed Christians, you've heard of the cage stage Calvinism, where we first discover the doctrines of grace, and so we alienate everyone we know by telling them they must believe in limited atonement. And then when our family stops listening, we start a blog and we tell the internet about it. And we're impatient because we've forgotten the grace that the Lord showed us, that, we believe salvation is by grace alone. Well, believing the doctrines of grace is by grace alone. It's by His grace that He was patient with us. He put us in front of a trusted teacher, and, He showed us and revealed truth to us. And so we need to be gracious in all of our online communications. And, if you grew up in a Christian home and you've always known the doctrines of grace, you didn't choose who your parents were. You didn't choose what family you were born into. Again, it's by grace. And so we should be a people that model that grace in all of our online communications and really try and push against that sinful boldness.
Yeah. And if you're like me, probably you'd look back and say your greatest regrets online, and I know I have too many of them, are in exactly this realm of speaking too freely, too harshly, forgetting that the person on the other side there is a real person, and probably, in most cases, a believer who's living for the Lord, and maybe we have some disagreement. It's so easy to say things that are hurtful and completely inappropriate.
I know that I've definitely deleted more tweets than I've ever sent.
Right. Yeah.
And really, if we just slept on it, when someone, you have an opinion about something, you see it in the news, or someone sends you a message online, if you just decided not to respond in the moment, like that would save a lot of grief. Now that doesn't mean that you don't need to repent and ask the Lord for forgiveness for whatever, the anger or whatever it is you may have experienced, and ask the Lord to help you grow in that area. But just by sleeping on it, we could save a lot of grief and turmoil that we see online. Well, Tim, I think the pre-conference has come to an end. The clock is telling us our time is up.
It is.
So thank you so much, Tim.
My pleasure. Thank you.